Biden's NASA transition team says it's a failing strategy to exclude China from their space plans. What are your thoughts on that mindset?
This is just inexplicable. You got to remember that the United States actually did get to the moon, even though we were behind the Soviets when they launched Sputnik. To think that we can't do this on our own is just a disrespecting of America. But really, what the Biden transition team is thinking about is what experts call the greatest transfer of American technology to China, as you pointed out before. And clearly, we shouldn't be doing this because China's program is military in nature. And when they get to the moon, they plan to exclude other nations from getting there. The head of China's lunar exploration program actually said this 2 years ago. So we've got to be very clear about why we cannot cooperate with a China that is militant.
And of course, China seeks to make the moon almost an eighth continent, as they're calling it. So what kind of minerals could they find and mine on the moon that could give them the edge over us?
Helium-3. And a number of people say that the world's first trillionaire will be the person who figures out how to mine the moon. But the moon is more than just a place to exploit commercially. It's a place as a jumping off place to Mars and the planets, as President Trump said. And it's also a place where China wants to militarize. If they grab the high ground of space, we could have what people call a space Pearl Harbor. So it's commercial, it's military, it's exploration, it's everything. And we just can't cede it to a militant state like China.
And do you think that the Biden transition team, that they're naive in a sense for thinking that cooperation will help to somewhat thaw ties with Beijing, especially when we're talking about a communist party that's not exactly known for keeping its word on pretty much anything?
Yeah, I hope it's just naivete. I hope it's not something else. But, China doesn't, as you say, doesn't honor its agreements, and it's certainly not going to honor any sort of agreement on joint exploration. We are going to find ourselves even further behind the Chinese, who are racing with relentless determination to dominate space.
What does that say about global leadership as well? Because this is there's a lot of optics here when it comes down to it. When we see China, they're sending lunar rovers all over the moon and they're taking back samples and they're going to the dark side of the moon. All these things that the U.S. necessarily isn't doing. Of course, under the Obama administration, we saw NASA lost a lot of funding. They had to shut down the shuttle program. A lot of our astronauts had to hitch rides to the International Space Station by going to Russia, of all countries. So what are the optics behind China going to the moon so often and kind of making it their home base?
Yes, and we've got to be concerned because the people with the same mindset are going to be part of the Biden administration. The Biden team says, well, look, they want to use space for climate change purposes, research. Okay, fine. But don't take dollars away from the Artemis program because we do need to get to the moon. And I fear that's what Biden plans to do, is basically to loot the Mars program, the moon program for climate change. And that is just wrong.
So if, God forbid, Biden were to be inaugurated next month, the president's plans of sending our men back to the moon and perhaps even to Mars in the next decade, in the 2030s, do you think under a potential President Biden that would not happen?
Yeah, I think that they will take the funding away from Artemis. Artemis needs to be funded more, not less. Just because this is a competition. And we're not dealing with a country like us. We're dealing with a regime that has made it very clear that it plans to use this for military purposes. Once China gets the high ground, they'll be able to control affairs on Earth. That means the U.S. military, for all its strength, could become blind in the first 10 minutes of a conflict. That's what's at stake here. And it's not just military. It's also, we depend on satellites for everything. China and Russia are getting the capability of shooting down our assets in space. We're not protecting them with the vigor that we need to.